Do you need to hire a private investigator today? Have you considered hiring a private investigator in the past? Are you a PI and have you ever wondered what is the process a client goes through when they are looking for a private investigator? If the answer to any of these is yes, then you need to stick around as we delve into the mysteries of finding the right private investigator. First off, let me tell you, I know that finding the right private investigator can be a very daunting and frustrating task. You see, for those who are looking to hire a private investigator, they already have a great deal of pressure due to the circumstances they are in. Before thinking about PI contracts, which we will discuss in detail later, the first thing I would suggest you do is to make a list of the reasons you need to hire a professional investigator. This list may be very short, or it could be very lengthy, but this list will help when you discuss the issues at hand with the PI. An example for your list for a case where you think your spouse is cheating might look something like this. He comes home late on certain nights. When he comes home on these nights, he seems distant and disinterested. He always says he was out with friends or coworkers, but never mentions them by name. He gets texts late at night. He keeps his phone away from me. The kids say there is a lady who stops by sometimes when I'm at work. Now, if you're a business owner and you think your business partner is embezzling money or running a competing business on the side, the list might look something like this. She suddenly has new expensive things like a new car and fancy jewelry. She meets with a lot of clients, but sales have been dramatically decreasing. She comes into the office late most days and then goes home early. Your list needs to have some details like these examples so you can give that to the prospective PIs so they can thoroughly evaluate the case and decide what course of action may be necessary. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. You should also add to your list some ideas of what the investigator may be able to do to help your case. For instance, in a cheating spouse or a child custody case, surveillance is often the route to go. As well, open source intelligence, OSINT investigations, and background checks can reveal a lot about a person too. For a business fraud case, surveillance may also be relevant. As well, OSINT and a comprehensive background for all those involved might be prudent. Of course, there are many varying parts to an investigation and you won't be able to list all of them, but having at least a partial list will help you understand what may be involved. There is still contractual and other legal obligations like insurance and bonding, which we will discuss in detail here in a moment. Your first step to finding the perfect professional private investigator, though, is to prepare yourself. You need to talk to 3 to 5 investigators, and you will need to relive and retell your story to each of them. This part will take some time, and it can get very emotional. When talking to private investigators, keep in mind their primary goal is to close the sale. After all, that is their job when they are on the phone with prospective clients. Your job, though, is not to find a PI the quickest, but to find the one that is the best fit for your situation and your budget. You, like most people searching for a PI, have never done this before and most likely will never have to do it again. So finding the right one the first time needs to be your highest priority. Now you need to sit down in a quiet place away from all the distractions and get on the internet and start doing some research. For most cases, I suggest you start with your state Private Investigators Association. When you go to these association websites, you will usually see something like Find a PI or Members List. Inside there, you will usually be able to drill down by investigative specialties and geographical areas. And you can review members' profiles that show everything they do and what geographical areas they cover. One thing you need to keep in mind, there is no PI that truly does everything. Most PIs specialize in only a few types of investigations. However, some may list just about everything under the sun and some things you have never heard of, just so they can appear to have more expertise than they really have. They are also usually hoping to get calls where they can refer clients to another PI and hoping to get a referral or a kickback. Or they may take the case and sub out the work to a more qualified PI. If you see a PI's profile that looks something like this, then you might want to be a little skeptical as to whether they have any true specialties, and you may want to vet them even more carefully. As well, if their profile shows the same for geographical areas and lists every town in the state, especially for larger states, there might be some concern there, as most tend to work within about an hour or so of their office or hometown. Now, to be sure, there are some PI firms out there that do cover an entire state and specialize in many types of investigations. But those are larger PI firms, and they are fewer and far between, and most will have many investigators working for them. Now you need to pick at least 5 PIs to look at. Jot down their name, then the investigative specialties that fit your needs, their phone number, and their website. For each of these PIs, you should review their website and see if it is professional and speaks to handling your type of case. Really give it a good, thorough reading. Go through every page. You also want to check with your state licensing authority and make sure they are licensed as required and their license is in good standing. And check to see if they have had complaints filed against them. You should also do an internet search for them to see if there are any news stories about them and look at online reviews. These can be very telling, but can also be very deceptive at times. Keep in mind, customers are 20 times more likely to leave bad reviews for perceived poor service than leave positive reviews for acceptable performance. So if you see a PI has 5 reviews, 4 or 5 stars, and 1 is a 1 star, that may not be as telling as one might think. When you talk to the PI, ask them about that bad review. Get their side of the story. After your research is done, you should now make a list from 1 to 5. If any of them just came across in your research as a definite no, then take them off the list. You should now also start calling them, starting with number 1, then go down the list. If you must leave a message, and many times you will have to, as most PIs are working other cases, make note of the time you left a message. I would suggest your message be brief, but give enough detail so they have a good idea of your needs. If you have not heard back from them in 24 hours, I would suggest they get scratched off the list. When you speak with the private investigators, you need to give them as much detail as you can so they can thoroughly evaluate your situation. You should take note of things like what questions they ask and did they seem to be listening. Did they come up with potential solutions for your case, or did they just throw out generic quotes? If they reiterate things you said, well, then that is a good sign. It shows they are listening and trying to ensure that they understand your case. If they just listen and then when you're done talking, they just say, we can start that investigation for X dollars, they may not be the best fit for you. Every case a PI takes should have its own investigative plan. Yes, there may be similarities, but there's a lot of specifics for each case too. Too many times I see PIs that just give a starting price. We can start that case for $1,000. What they often really mean is they will get that initial fee, then build a case plan, use the initial retainer just to cover their time building a plan, and do a little snooping around, then come back for more money over and over again. Your best bet is a professional private investigator that can give you a good idea of what the entire investigation will cost and will entail, or at least what a starting point looks like in detail. For instance, a fraud case may be initiated with, let's say, a $2,500 retainer. That will include comprehensive backgrounds on the 2 individuals in question, 3 days of surveillance, report time and other research, and after that, depending on our findings, we may need to discuss further investigations as necessary. Make note of what they offer, how they offer it, and don't make decisions on the fly. Now, before you get into discussing the contractual details with the PI, which we will cover that process here in a moment, you need to know what type of insurance they have and what type of bond they have. They need to have liability and errors and omissions insurance to cover any mishaps that might occur during the investigation, and a bond in the amount that covers your retainer fee. The bond really protects you, the consumer. If they run off with your retainer and never do any work, you can go after that bond. The insurance protects them for liability if mistakes are made during the investigation. Keep in mind, though, if the state you live in does not have licensing, They most likely do not have a bond, as bond companies usually only do bonds when a bond is required by law. You then should use the information from each PI and formulate a list of follow-up questions and call each one back and ask those questions. Now you should have a good idea what each of them has to offer, and hopefully you can narrow it down to 2 to 3 PIs. Your final decision may be based on experience, price, and gut feel, or a combination of all things considered. If you have vetted them out well, you should now be able to enter into an agreement with one of them with a fair amount of confidence. But you also need to discuss what you can expect from them during and after the investigation, and I will cover that here in a moment. Now that you have decided on the PI to use, you should enter into a contract with them. If they do not do contracts, I would be very leery of doing business with them. This is standard practice for all legal businesses. In fact, most PI licensing requirements require a contract for all clients. You should ask to get a copy of their insurance certificate, not the entire policy, just a certificate, and their bond along with the contract. Go over the contract in depth and write down notes and questions. If needed, have an attorney go over it, or an accountant, or a friend that understands legalese. You may not have the ability to make changes to the contract, but you can always ask for changes. You need to know the details of the contract well before you sign it. Once signed, make sure you get a signed copy from them. You should expect to see things in the contract like the hourly rates of how your money is being spent, summary details of the investigation, reporting expectations, cancellation clause if you need to cancel the contract, and other legal matters. During the investigation, you should be able to get progress updates, so you want to discuss this with the PI too. After the investigation, you should get a report of findings along with video, photo, and other evidence gathered within a reasonable time frame. You should discuss this with the private investigator so you know what to expect and make sure those expectations are covered in the contract. You also need to keep in mind your professional private investigator is a finder of the facts. They cannot make things happen throughout the course of their investigation. What they do is investigate the matter at hand and report the findings. As well, they cannot guarantee any results of the investigation other than they will work diligently and report what they have discovered. Now, if you want to know more about the wonderful world of private investigations, then check out this video.